Chapter 529, Unexpected. Li Zu's eyes brightened. She carefully scrutinized and re-evaluated Ling Tian, a look of praise in her eyes. All along, she had thought that Ling Tian was just a person with an ice-cold expression. Wherever he appeared, it would be accompanied by bloodshed, and he never stopped to question nor to plan any sort of conspiracy. His only thought was just to follow the direction that Ling Tian decided for him, to annihilate, to destroy. Thus, Li Zu had always thought that Ling Tian was merely a martial arts warrior, successfully becoming an assassin at the peak. She never thought that this was Ling Tian's plan for himself all along. Only now did Li Zu find out that she had seriously underestimated this fellow. Ling Tian's intelligence lay in the fact that he had pinpointed what position he should take for himself. By all rights he could have taken over Ling Tian's current position, becoming the number 2 in power within the Ling family courtyard and Ling Tian's strategists. However, he chose to silently hide within the shadows, doing what he did best, not stepping out of line. While doing this might give him a lot of limitations, the benefit in doing so was that Ling Tian would never suspect Ling Tian, anyone except him. This was the intelligence of Ling Tian. Ling Tian's eyes also lit up, re-evaluating this brotherly figure whom she grew up with, a look of admiration in her eyes. Just as everyone within the secret chamber was in deep thought, there came the sound of knocking from outside as a guard announced the presence of the Shui family's great elder as well as the Princess Shui Qian. The three women shared a smile, and Li Zu lazily stood up, saying, "Sister Bing Yan, let's go see how much your painting has improved." Yu Bing Yan burst out into giggles and the two women escaped without a trace. Ling Qian and Ling Jian faced each other with a bitter smile, knowing that they were once again going to be the scapegoats for doing hard labor. Looking in the direction that Li Zu was escaping, Ling Jian angrily replied, "She sure runs fast, and this isn't the first time." Ling Qian sighed instead, "Why would she not run? I would if I had the chance." Ling Jian rolled his eyes at her in response. "How about Ling Dian accompany you then?" "A broken bar too do not wish to see that elder. I'm afraid that I'll kill him if my temper gets too riled up." Only to be met with a glare from her. "Your meaning is to say that you want to escape too?" "No way. This matter was caused by you." "Want to run?" "There's no free lunch in this world." Ling Jian could only sigh in defeat. In the main hall, Ling Qian sweetly received her guests, while Ling Jian with a sour poker face stood behind her without a word, but to the elder himself, the pressure he exuded was unbearable. Regarding the cooperation between the two parties, while Ling Qian was extremely courteous, she was also just as unyielding. Her terms and conditions were still as before when she had stated them, maybe even harsher. She had affirmed the words which Ling Jian had spoken, which was that the Ling family would not be responsible for the supply of food to the Shui family and that they had to fork out 50 taels of silver per head per day. Furthermore, any injuries would be borne by themselves. After Ling Qian had finished speaking, Ling Jian had suddenly coldly interjected with another sentence, that if the Shui family wanted a collaboration, then they would proceed in this direction. If they had any other objections then both parties could walk their own separate ways. In addition, Ling Jian had emphasized, that the three idiots had better not appear in front of him again, or else. As for whom the three idiots were, everyone was extremely clear on that. This conclusion made the first elder of the Shui family seethe in anger, but having to stifle it. Even after living for a good half of this life, he had never been forced to stifle down so much resentment. If he had known of this, then he would have just left everything to Shui Qian to settle. At least with their previous agreement, they would not have eaten such a great loss. In the end, both parties decided that once the Yu family's people withdrew from Skybearing, it would then be the time for both families to take action. At that time, the Ling family would update Shui Qian, and furthermore, they would only accept the cooperation under the leadership of Shui Qian. As for the others, sorry about it, they could not be trusted. After going round in so many circles, the authority once again landed in Qian's hands. This let many of the elders feel like puking blood. However, since matters had reached this point, the circumstances of the situation could not be changed by man, and they could only pinch their noses in distaste and accept this decision. The happiest person within this was, of course, Shui Qian. The flourishing feelings within their sworn sister relationship were something she could naturally feel. As for the cooperation this time, Shui Qian had even more of an assurance than before. Just as the discussion on collaboration was going on, Shui Qianjiang's group was also carrying out their own operation, and it was this precise action that made Shui Qian unable to live in the same sky as these three brothers. After seeing how the Great Elder and Shui Qian walked out in succession, the three brothers had started to feel indignant. If they were to continue to let the current state of affairs continue, then even if they were to move against the Yu family now, in the end all the credit would fall to Shui Qian. In the worst case, the family might even pursue their internal friction and assign the blame as the fault of their three brothers. The more they thought about it, the angrier they got, and they began to scold out loud. From Shui Qian, they scolded to the Ling family, and from the Ling family, they scolded back down to Shui Qian. Sitting with his back towards the trunk of a blossoming tree in the courtyard, Ling Kai suddenly heard the cursing sounds coming from their room. The content of their cursing made him flare up in rage, wanting to take action personally and kill off those three idiots. However, his mind whirred, and the corners of his lips curled up into a strange smile as he took deliberate steps towards the room where Shui Qian was recuperating. Upon opening the door, he was greeted with a pungent medical smell. Shui 7 was busy decocting medicine for Shui Qian, while the young noble was still lying on his bed, breathing heavily with his face pale as paper. Even after such a long time, his internal injuries had not seemed to have recovered for the better. This only served to make this rising star from water of heavenly wind even more depressed, and with the negative emotions shrouding his heart, it would be a wonder if he could even recover with such a vicious cycle. When Ling Kai opened the door, Shui Qian and Shui 7 did not pay any attention. It was instead Deer who was sitting by the side who raised her bright eyes and gave him a look, before turning her head away with her face flushed. This moving sight captured Ling Kai's heart, making him sigh secretly before he began to talk. To treat an internal injury, the mood of the patient plays a huge part. Just relying on medicine cannot heal everything. One has to get out from time to time, relaxing the body and mind to recover faster. Deer stood up, a worried look on her face as she replied, "Where can we go? After all, it's not our place here." Her voice was low, tinged with anxiety. As she glanced at Ling Kai's face, she sighed, feeling her emotions in a great mess. Ling Kai gently smiled as he replied, "Who says you have to travel for a long distance in order to relax? Young noble Shui is after all injured, and strenuous exercise will instead be harmful to him. My exercise is actually for him to just breathe in some fresh air around the area. Today's weather is good, and he can go out to see the sun and feel the wind. If he stays within the room all day, even a normal person will get sick, let alone him." Deer's eyes lit up, and she looked at Shui Qian, tentatively opening her mouth and saying, "Young master, you look to be in better spirits today. How about a broken bar? We go out for a walk, bask in the sunlight, and breathing in some fresh air should be good for you." This sentence was obviously meant only to comfort him, for anyone who was able to see would realize that the young noble had a pasty complexion. Nothing was good or better about him. However, Shui Qian nodded his head absent-mindedly and replied, "That would be good to do." After commanding Shui 7 to lift him up, Deer prepared a chair and put him below a blossoming tree. After being cooped inside the room for almost half a month, the air outside felt a lot fresher, allowing Shui Qian to jolt to his senses, no longer feeling so burdened and heavy. He nodded gratefully to Ling Kai as a sign of his thanks. Deer looked at Ling Kai as he leaned on another tree far away from them, biting on a lush green leaf. The guy faced the sky, looking free and easy as he sat there, making her feel extremely envious. However, looking closely, she felt that on this youth actually lay a sense of solemnness and loneliness that could not be found in anyone of their age. She didn't know why, but looking at him gave her a sense of heartache. Glancing at her young noble, who was squinting his eyes towards the sun in an expression of ecstasy, she slowly shifted towards Ling Kai. At this point, the sounds traveling from the room had become louder and louder, and a smashing sound was heard as though someone had thrown an object on the ground. Shui 7 turned his head towards the sound, but Qian acted as though he did not even hear a thing. The great ambition of this young noble had long faded to dust, and nothing much could actually catch his attention at this point. Deer came beside Ling Kai and sat down. Blinking, she murmured to herself, "I wonder when the tempers of this few young masters can be changed. So annoying." Ling Kai continued staring at the sky, not looking at her, but the corners of his mouth curled up in a mocking smile as he replied, "Young noble once mentioned that mountains and rivers can be altered, but a person's character cannot be changed. How could their tempers be changed so easily? Most likely, even when they die, they would still be like that. As such, even if they die, they only have their own bad luck to blame. Deer had actually been provoking Ling Kai the last few days but without any response. Seeing him suddenly opening his mouth to talk, she could not help but feel excited, and leaning towards him, smiling as she teased, "Seems like even wooden blocks can talk." Ling Kai merely snorted and refused to say another word. Deer was gloomy and wanted to further incite Ling Kai to talk, but refused to lower herself to do so. Suddenly, a loud high-pitched scream was heard, which sounded like an ambiguous shout of pain. It was Shui Qian whose painkiller had worn off, and with him having half of his teeth knocked out by Ling Jian, he started to scream out like a dying pig. Shui Qian Jiang's voice could then be heard, "That jerk is really vicious. Just one slap from him and second brother lost half of his teeth. Seems like he won't be able to enjoy his meal the next few days. Come tomorrow, I'll go look for a famous physician to help you tend to your wounds." Shui Qian spat, as he remarked with some schadenfreude, "I don't think second brother really suffered a lot. He nearly got to touch that little lass's hands. If he had done so, then the punch would have been totally worth it." As he spoke, he sniggered. Shui Qian too laughed as he commented, "Pity, what a pity." However, it was not known what he was commenting on. Shui Qian raised his voice, speaking in an unsatisfied tone, however, that Shui Qian really had good fortune, lying on his bed every day like some pimp, and even having such a good sister who would be so willing to work for him. A broken bar. Shui Qian's face turned malicious as it sank down. It was a long while before he darkly replied, "That trash, Shui Qian is already half dead, with such serious internal injuries, while he might be able to make a comeback, his days are already numbered. What's the point in caring for him? I'm more worried about a broken bar." At this time, Shui Qian looked outside, and sniggered, whispering, "That trash has finally come out." With a laugh, Shui Qian immediately raised his voice, "So what if he's come out? Trash is ultimately still trash. Could it suddenly turn into a treasure? I dare to say this in front of this good-for-nothing. Since he's trash, how could he not allow people to speak of him that way? Trash. He cannot get things done, a trash that has an abundance of failure. Big trash." Under the blossoming tree, Shui Qian's body trembled when he heard the humiliation. He slowly opened his eyes, hoarsely commenting, "What a good-for-nothing did. You three screwed it up with a sentence or two. In that case, aren't you people worse than trash actually? 1,000 people staying here, but all of you can only stare helplessly. Stare on then. Skybearing's scenery is quite nice. 50 taels of silver a day. You've really got the best seats in the house." With a squeaking sound, the doors to a room opened, and Shui Qian stood in front of it, a dark expression on his face as he stared straight at Qian, jeering, "Even if we have to pay 50 taels a day to see the scenery, it's far better than some failure who sacrificed over 1,000 lives of our brothers, and threw away our foundation that we had been building for over a few decades. Even the failure himself was not spared, causing him to be half dead. What a drama." Shui Qian coughed twice, looking somewhere else as he sniggered, "Even with a body riddled with injuries, making me half dead, it was all for the family. I, Shui Qian, have a clear conscience. One day, the family will understand all that I've done for them, and not allow those petty people to defame me any longer." Shui Qian laughed out sharply, "For the family? What a joke! Young Master Shui, no young Master Shui, have you been knocked silly by your emotions? If not for our arrival, I'm afraid that this young Master Shui who only thinks of his family would have floated up to heaven in regret. Now you're struggling at death's door, yet you still dare to boast shamelessly. How amusing. Who knows if your injuries were actually inflicted by the enemies or yourself? After all, if you're injured, then the family cannot punish you. Those wounds would then be worth it." Within Shui Qian's words was thinly veiled sarcasm, hinting that Shui Qian had mutilated himself to avoid taking responsibility. The moment these three people met, it was as though they were age-old enemies, one insult after another shooting off from their mouths. The more they spoke, the nastier it sounded, and the flames of anger grew ever higher. Ling Kai continued to sit by the side, turning a deaf ear to the quarrels of the group. However, he subconsciously put in another blade of foxtail grass into his mouth. His face remained impassive, but his taut muscles had gradually begun to relax. Was this not the scene Ling Kai most wanted to see? Such a good show. How could he not properly savor it? From the time he heard the three brothers curse to calling Shui Qian out for some fresh air, All of his words were geared towards this scenario. Ever since Ling Tian had realized the temper of the three brothers, as well as the closeness of the two siblings Shui Qianhuan and Shui Qianru, she had decided on this plan to sow discord among them so that she could fulfill the plan of conquering the heavenly wind continent as well. To ensure this plan would work, Ling Kai did not mind adding some oil on top of the flames. Even if they were as tight and sweet as honey, Ling Chen would still have to make sparks fly among them, let alone their current circumstances where they treated each other like enemies. All for the family clan? Shui Qianhuan, you piece of trash, because of your ignorance you have failed the hopes your family put on you, sending all of the 400,000 strong troops in Northern Wei to their graves. Furthermore, you used our family's trust, employing the secret forces within Northern Wei which were the decades-long act of our family, and handed them on a platter to the Yu family. This is what you claim to have done for the family. If not for the fact that you favor outsiders instead of your own family, we wouldn't have been called to come over to Heavenly Star. And to think that you even instructed your own sister, in order to obtain goodwill towards you, to hand over all benefits unconditionally. You even hid that fact during our discussions, causing us to be humiliated. This is what you did for our family. Shui Qianzhang concluded with a cold laugh, his eyes sharp like blades. This is what you call for the family? Ahaha, wasn't it all to consolidate your work and take the chance to carry a beauty home? A pity that I heard young Master Shui did not manage to move the beauty's heart at all. Shui Qianhuan's impassive expression was suddenly replaced by one of rage, as he raised his head to glare at the other party. Bullshit. The Shui family's business has always been our own. What has it got to do with the lady from another house? Shui Qianzhang, you had better watch your words. What? Not happy? Feeling injustice for the lady? Shui Qianhai interjected, she's just a serving maid in the end. I wasn't aware of that point, or with her identity. I wouldn't even consider if she was sent up to my doorstep, for fear that she would dirty my own noble status. To think you actually fell head over heels for a serving maid belonging to others, conducting yourself like she's everything you ever wanted. I believe if Ling Tian were to find out about this, he would definitely be very happy. This sentence hooked onto Shui Qianhuan's heart like a barbed thorn, making him unable to breathe properly for a while. He ruthlessly glared and spat. What did you say? What are you implying? What do I mean? Ha ha, putting myself in his shoes, I would be extremely happy too. Shui Qianhai wiggled his eyebrows, saying in a weird tone, a serving maid is like a concubine, do you know what that is? For a toy that somebody has played with till they got tired of it, finding out that one of the young masters from the greatest two families of this world would still get infatuated over it. Haha, a broken bar, what an honorable thing. I won't allow you to slander Lady Ling Tian in this manner. Shui Qianhuan started to hyperventilate. Take back your words, or else I will kill you. I will definitely kill you. Isn't that so? Shui Qianhai's smile got more lecherous. A toy that someone has gotten tired of playing with, but you actually still treat her like some treasure. You actually care about her reputation so much. TSK, but too bad she doesn't reciprocate. Hee, kill me? Shui Qianhuan, do you think that this place is still the Shui family, your piece of heaven? Don't give me any airs from your broken young master look. Young Master Shui, you're already finished. Shui Qianhuan, kill me? Do you have the capacity? You're really dreaming. How naive. Shui Qianhuan's breathing was getting more and more hurried now, and his face had completely turned red. He sharply barked, animals. Insane animals without any morals. What sort of qualifications do you have to lead the Shui family? What sort of qualifications you guys have to insult Lady Ling Tian like so? All of you a broken bar aren't worthy. A loud bang was heard, as an oblong object shot out from the window. Because of the close proximity, coupled with the fact that nobody was expecting it, the object actually landed squarely on Shui Qianhuan's chest. With some cracking sounds, Shui Qianhuan's chest caved in as all the bones surrounding it were broken. A mouthful of purplish black blood was spat out as he was falling unconscious, at his last gasp. That object then landed on the ground with a metallic thunk, turning out to be a pot used to decoct medicinal herbs. The scene was too sudden and left everyone in great shock. As everyone was exclaiming, a vague angered voice was heard, "Deem it, a dogshti servant maid actually has someone treating her like a treasure. If not for that slut, this father would not have had his teeth knocked out." Shui Qianhuan, just you wait, one day, I'll strip her naked in front of you and let her enjoy all she can. Shui Qianhuan doggedly held on to his last breath, staring at Shui Qianhu inside the room. He replied in a low voice, "Shui Qianhu, a broken bar will a broken bar personally kill you?" Before he fell into a coma, his internal injuries were already serious to begin with, and with the impact from the metal pot, his bones that were already broken before snapped easily. With the shock from both internal and external wounds, even an iron-willed man would not be able to handle it. He fell into a dead faint, his life in danger. Seeing this situation, Shui Qianzhang and Qianhai knew that they were in deep trouble, their faces turning white in an instant. While Shui Qianhuan had committed an unforgivable crime, it was not up to the three brothers to decide his sentence. Now that Shui Qianhu had committed such an act, if Shui Qianhuan really died, then the three of them would not go scot-free. In the worst case, they would be sent to accompany him as well. A shadow flashed, and Ling Kai reached to the side of Shui Qianhuan, immediately feeling for his pulse while injecting pure internal energy to stabilize his heart and organs to ensure that he could keep his life. Everything happened at too quick a pace and went contrary to his own expectations. Never did he think that Shui Qianhu would react so intensely to the slanders about Ling Tian's to even throw the medicine basin at his own relative. To deal such a killing blow to his own cousin, wasn't that too callous of him? Right now, Ling Kai could not allow Shui Qianhuan to die. With this incident, even the normally calm and unruffled Ling Kai started to panic a little. Having been slapped figuratively and literally by Ling Jian today, since when would this pampered young noble ever suffer from such a humiliation? The root cause was because of Ling Qian's beauty, and thinking of this point, he naturally transferred all his hate towards her. Upon hearing Qianhuan shield Ling Qian so protectively, he naturally flared up, and under his agitation from the wounds, grabbed the first thing available and threw it out. This was thrown purely with his own muscle strength and without an ounce of internal energy. If it were to have hit anyone else within the courtyard, they would at most sport a small bruise. However, the anyone else did not include Shui Qianhuan. How much of a coincidence could there be? Even Shui Qianhu himself did not expect that the pot he flung carelessly could so accurately hit Shui Qianhuan in the center of his chest. Chapter 530. Inability to seek death. Even Shui Qianhu never imagined that his casual toss would actually be so accurate, smashing the medicine pot right onto the heavily injured Shui Qianhuan. Hearing the loud shriek coming from the outside, Shui Qianhu stuck his head out of the window and saw the outcome of his casual toss. He could not help but tremble as he felt his whole body turning cold. Things are truly bad this time. Shui Qianzhang and Shui Qianhai, who were still arguing previously, disappeared with a swoosh sound. If they weren't going to run now, when should they run? At this moment, the startled deer used all of her strength and let out a loud shriek. Shui Qianhuan lowered his head with a pale expression. Apart from the slight rising and falling of his chest, there wasn't a single sign of life. With his chest being smashed by the medicine pot, his ribs were completely fractured and he could no longer move. The moment he tried to move, death would probably come next. The situation had actually developed to such a horrible extent. Ling Kai was drenched in sweat as he continued to put out his inner chi. If Shui Qianhuan died right here, all of Ling Qian's plans would definitely be ruined. At this moment, Ling Kai was extremely anxious. A commotion sounded from the outside and Shui Qianhu was returning excitedly from her conversation with the first Heldra broken bar. When Shui Qianhu saw her brother's pitiful appearance, the anger that she had suppressed for a long time exploded like a volcano. Who did that? Did an enemy attack us? Ling Kai stood up emotionlessly with sweat still all over his face as he saw Shui Qianhu's arrival. He had already exhausted all of his inner chi and spent a large amount of pure inner chi before finally being able to protect Shui Qianhuan's final vitality, preventing him from dying on the spot. But despite that, Shui Qianhuan's situation was still not optimistic. His breathing was weak and it looked as though he would stop breathing at any moment. The first elder was astounded by the sight in front of him. While Shui Qianhuan was currently a center of his family, he was heavily injured after all and was still the son of the current family head. Right after they brought reinforcements to Heavenly Star, something like this had actually happened. It was just that this did not seem like an enemy attack at all. Could it be that the men he brought almost beat Shui Qianhuan to death? If this matter happened during a normal sparring match, then it was explainable and there would still be a chance for them to defend themselves. However, Shui Qianhuan was obviously seriously injured and incapable of defending himself at the moment. However, he was still injured to such an extent. The despicable actions of the culprit really made one's hair stand in anger. Deer, who was in a complete daze, finally snapped back to her senses and she threw herself by Shui Qianhuan's side, explaining to Shui Qianhuan everything which had happened. The anger on Shui Qianhuan's face grew thicker and after suppressing the anger in her heart, she carefully inspected Shui Qianhuan's injuries. The situation in front of her could not be any worse and Shui Qianhuan felt her head turning dizzy. Her body shook unsteadily and she almost passed out at that moment. Her brother's internal injuries were already severe and his internal organs were shaken up again. Furthermore, his ribs were also fractured and his life was truly like a candle flickering in the wind. If they did not help Shui Qianhuan connect his bones and avoid touching his injuries while trying to protect his life force with inner chi, Shui Qianhuan would probably be able to survive for a few more days, but the outcome would be unknown. But if they were to attempt to connect his bones right now, Shui Qianhuan would definitely be unable to survive such a large operation. But if they didn't connect his ribs and allowed them to remain fractured in his chest, the pain Shui Qianhuan would suffer would be worse than death. After Shui Qianhuan was injured, he already had difficulties breathing. However, with all of his ribs fractured now, every breath he took would be accompanied by the torture of going through all 18 levels of hell. Staying alive in such a manner without knowing how long more he can stay alive. If that was the case, what was the point of him staying alive any longer? To the present Shui Qianhuan, death was perhaps the biggest grace and pleasure. Shui Qianhuan's injuries had deteriorated to the point where even a deity would find it difficult to treat. What choice should she make? Shui Qianhuan sat down beside her brother with low spirits and tears flowed down her cheeks. At this moment, she was completely disheartened. A long while later, she collapsed onto the ground and began bawling her eyes out. The first elder walked into the room and roared, "Where is Shui Qianhu? Come out now for this old man." He was extremely clear that only those three degenerates would dare to heavily injure Shui Qianhuan in such a manner. At the same time, the room was in a complete mess and Shui Qianhu's figure was nowhere to be seen. Even both Shui Qianzhang and Shui Qianhai had also disappeared completely. A broken bar. The other elders walked in from the outside and let out a unified sigh. All of them were extremely appalled by what had happened. Following a light coughing sound, Shui Qianhuan gradually woke up and opened his eyes with difficulty. Looking at his sister kneeling down in front of him and bawling her eyes out, Shui Qianhuan was visibly agitated. Despite looking as though he wanted to say something, not a single word could leave his mouth. His eyeballs then spun around and he looked towards Ling Kai's emotionless face with a pleading look. Ling Kai felt his heart shake. Shui Qianhuan was pleading for death. He was pleading towards this only outsider. After going through countless of bloody slaughters, Ling Kai could naturally understand the intentions behind Shui Qianhuan's gaze. Since there wasn't a hope to stay alive, Shui Qianhuan would rather plead for death so he could suffer less. Shui Qianhuan lifted his head up and shook her head heavily while wailing uncontrollably. Shui Qianhuan's condition was far too severe and Shui Qianhuan did not dare to touch him at all. She could only plead with tears rolling down her eyes. "Brother, please see broken bar, please see broken bar, please continue living in a broken bar, please hold on and don't give up a broken bar, please don't leave me behind alone a broken bar." Seeing Shui Qianhuan's gaze, Ling Kai's heart was stirred. "Even though I didn't kill Bo Ren died because of me." While Ling Kai did not have a single shred of goodwill towards Shui Qianhuan and had some prejudice against him because of Ling Tian, Ling Kai's heart was indeed stirred at this moment. He decided a broken bar. Ling Kai took 2 steps forward and whispered into Shui Qianhuan's ears softly but clearly, "I understand what you mean, but you cannot despair at this moment. This is not the time for you to go to the Yellow Springs Road." Shui Qianhuan's eyes were filled with misery and urgency as he let out soft groaning sounds. Despite being unable to say a single word, it was obvious that Shui Qianhuan was begging for death. Ling Kai then said softly, "Didn't you say that you want to kill Shui Qianhu personally? This is probably your last regret at this moment, right? We are both men and there isn't a need for you to say anything more." Both of us know that it is impossible for you to carry on living, but I believe that you will definitely be able to last for another 2 more days. I will let Shui Qianhu die in your hands. Don't you want to see him die? Don't you want him to die in your hands? Are you willing to die before your enemy? Die before a scoundrel like him? Shui Qianhuan's breathing became ragged and his eyes lit up with a trace of gratitude. At the same time, a trace of blood trailed down from his lips and he trembled for a moment before falling unconscious. Shui Qianhu shrieked and Ling Kai let out a sigh. At the same time, he looked at the unconscious Shui Qianhuan and said firmly, "Don't worry, I will let Shui Qianhu die in your hands. I will then send you on your final journey personally. As long as you fulfill your final wish, I will not let you suffer any more pain." Ling Kai then added on in his heart, "All of your pain was caused by me, and while I did not want such an outcome, an accident still happened. I am sorry." Shui Qianhuan. Shui Qianhu lifted her head up and grit her teeth as she looked at Ling Kai. "What do you mean by that? Are you really able to accomplish that? Is there a point to coax my brother like that? Is there a meaning to do that? While I really want to thank you, is this truly good for my brother?" Ling Kai looked at her calmly before pointing to Deer and Shui 7. "You can ask them what the words I said mean." He then spread out his arms and a pure inner chi wrapped around Shui Qianhuan's body. He then let out a soft grunt before lifting both man and chair up. Ling Kai then walked into the room slowly without the unconscious Shui Qianhuan feeling a single thing. After a short 7 to 8 steps, Ling Kai's face was already completely drenched in sweat. Shui Qianhu's face was filled with grief, but a trace of gratitude could be seen in her eyes. However, it was quickly replaced with hatred and she barked, "Catch the 3 of them and bring them back immediately. I must kill them to take revenge for my brother." A look of a headache could be seen on the 6 elders' face and they all avoided Shui Qianhu's gaze. The first elder then sighed, "Little princess, please control yourself." Cough cough. "Before this incident is fully investigated, it is best for you to not act trashly. We should discuss this matter further." "What?" Shui Qianhu turned around in anger. "First elder, now that things have developed to such an extent, you are still going to say such words? How do you expect me to control myself? What else is still unclear? Discuss this matter further? How can such words even leave your mouth?" The first elder's face turned red and he said softly, "May Princess requell your anger. It is best for us to invite a physician to treat young master first. As for chasing after Shui Qianhu, cough cough, there are still many other things before us, and with the important matters at hand, it is best for us to a broken bar delay this matter." Shui Qianhu fell silent for a short while before saying with grit teeth. She then enunciated every word slowly, "I understand." She raised her head up. "What you are trying to say is that the men you brought would not listen to my orders. Am I right? Everything is for the family. The family's benefits are the most important." The first elder said solemnly, "Family, family?" Shui Qianhu cried, "Haha, a broken bar family. What is a family? I finally understand. I finally understand." She then stopped laughing and said in a low voice, "I will not use anyone from the Shui family, but I will definitely let the 3 of them die. You guys just wait. If I do not take revenge for my brother, I, Shui Qianhu, will not be a human." After she said those words, she walked straight into Shui Qianhuan's room without looking back. At this moment, her skinny figure seemed so desolate and lonely but yet heroic. Chapter 531, Crisis of the Shui Family. The 6 elders let out a sigh together. The moment this matter erupted, it would definitely incite the biggest internal conflict within the Shui family in the past couple of decades. Perhaps the upper echelons of the Shui family would be completely changed after this incident. However, the most important thing right now was not the life and death of the 3 Shui brothers. Instead, it was to inform the 2nd and 3rd Master in Heavenly Wind about what had just happened here. The 2nd and 3rd Masters were in the same faction as the Elders Hall. If their family head, Shui Mancon, were to find out about the matters here, who knows what would happen. At that time, even if Shui Wobo wanted to suppress this matter, It would be completely useless, losing his only son at such an old age. What kind of a blow would that be? No matter how good Shui Man Kong was at controlling himself, it would be impossible for him to suppress his anger. Right when Shui Qian'er entered the room, a black hawk flew up into the sky with a loud cry. Shui Qian'er stared at the departing hawk with a dazed look. Ling Kai then explained slowly, I have already informed Big Sister about this incident and asked her to find a good physician. Even if we aren't able to save young noble Shui's life, we should try to reduce his pain. Shui Qian'er slumped into a chair with fatigue as tears rolled down her cheeks and said with a choking voice, I am no longer in the right state of mind and cannot be bothered with anything else. I will have to trouble you for everything. Thank you. Ling Kai let out a sigh. At this moment, Shui Qian'er was like a living zombie with her heart completely cold and all hope lost. All of a sudden, she felt an endless sense of fatigue and grief. Family. This word suddenly made Shui Qian'er feel an endless anger. This was the so-called family. This was the family which she was willing to sacrifice everything to protect. This was the prestigious 1,000-year-old family in the eyes of the world. All of a sudden, Shui Qian'er could imagine Ling Tian standing in front of her and reprimanding her with his stern and merciless tone. Shui Qian'er covered her face with her hands and began sobbing in grief. While the sound of her sobbing wasn't loud, the dense grief and emotions of her tears could be clearly felt. As the princess of the Shui family, a top-notch Xianjian expert in the world who had everything her way since she was born, Shui Qian'er suddenly felt as though she was the only one left in the world. Everything which she had depended and relied on in the past had disappeared completely at this moment. From now on, there was no longer anyone left for her to rely on and she would be left alone in the world. Ling Kai, with your skills, how could you allow someone to harm my brother in front of you? I need an explanation. Give me an explanation. Shui Qian'er suddenly stopped sobbing and asked this question. She finally regained her cool and reverted back to her usual self. At the very first moment, she immediately realized the biggest question. This was the final pride of a talented lady like her and also her only doubt. She could not ignore this question, and even if she were to lose her only support after this, she would still have to ask this question. She had already lost far too much, and being in this state of hopelessness she was no longer afraid of losing this final alliance mate of hers. Ling Kai stared at her coldly and stood up. Without saying a word, he walked out of the room. At this moment, any form of explanation would only make Shui Qian'er doubt him more. Instead, not giving her any explanation would help alleviate her doubts. Stop there, Shui Qian'er roared. However, she did not turn around as she said, when they were arguing, the three Shui brothers had insulted elder sister Ling Tian. Why didn't you say anything at that moment? As Ling Tian's subordinate and Ling Tian's underling, why didn't you voice a single word of retort? Do you think that is very normal? Was all of this an intentional arrangement on your part? To make use of a dying man to sow discord within our Shui family? That's right. My brother is also deeply in love with elder sister Ling Tian. What a good plan of yours to kill two birds with one stone. Was that your motive? At this moment, Shui Qian'er's voice was extremely calm, but a simmering anger could be heard hiding within the calmness. In Shui Qian'er's eyes, this was Ling Kai's biggest flaw. If Ling Kai wasn't able to give her an appropriate explanation, then Shui Qian'er was certain that this whole incident was caused by Ling Kai. At the same time, Ling Tian and the others may even be accomplices. However, was it possible for Ling Kai to give Shui Qian'er a reasonable explanation? A dense killing intent suddenly burst forth in the room. Deer looked towards Shui Qian'er and Ling Kai with fear and worry in her eyes. She wanted to help be the mediator between the two of them, but just did not know what to say. She truly did not want to see her young miss argue with Ling Kai. At this moment, Ling Kai was already by the door but suddenly stopped and turned around. He then looked at Shui Qian'er with a calm expression and a hint of mockery. If I said that I wasn't the slightest bit angry at that moment, would Miss Shui believe me? Not angry? What a fine excuse. So you're trying to say that since you're not angry, there isn't a need for you to arrange any plans? What a wonderful excuse. Do you think that I will believe you? Shui Qian'er sneered. The atmosphere became tense and was about to explode at any moment. Ling Kai seemed to have ignored Shui Qian'er's sneer and said calmly, Miss Shui, are you interested to know why I wasn't angry? Speak. Shui Qian'er said coldly. At the same time, Her fists were clenched and she was filled with anger and killing intent towards Ling Kai. Ling Kai chuckled and said emotionlessly, "Do you know, from the moment the three of them insulted Miss Chen, the three of them were akin to three corpses in my eyes. Even if your Shui family wants to protect them, it will be completely useless. It is impossible for the three of them to leave Skybearing alive. This is the reason why it isn't worth getting angry with them." Ling Kai smiled coldly. This incident today only hastened the date of their deaths. Shui Qian'er's voice remained chilly. "Is my brother also a dead person in your eyes?" "He is also an admirer of elder sister Chen." Ling Kai's eyes glowed. "Miss Shui, if I were to put it in a nasty manner, your brother is already heavily injured and on the edge of death. Even if I have the desire to harm him, there isn't a need for me to do it in such an obvious manner, right? Besides that, this doesn't seem relevant to him admiring Sister Chen either. In the Skybearing territory, there are at least thousands who admire Sister Chen. Can I kill them all? It is only natural for your brother to admire Sister Chen, and even if he is only daydreaming, it doesn't warrant his death. However, the three of them are different. Besides that, on account of Miss Shui's face, even if your brother deserves to die, only our young noble will have the authority to decide that. It wouldn't be my place to make the decision. Beyond that, sowing discord within the Shui family." Ling Kai smiled with mockery. "Is Miss Shui still unaware about the situation in the Shui family? Is there a need for me to sow discord within your Shui family? I will only say these words. May Miss Shui consider them on your own. If I wanted to kill your brother, does Miss Shui think that he would still be breathing?" After saying those words, Ling Kai's figure disappeared. Shui Qian'er's back still faced the door and she did not turn around even once when Ling Kai was saying. Her slender back was filled with desolation and loneliness. A long while later, Shui Qian'er suddenly said, "Dear, come here and explain the situation to me again in detail, including the position of everyone present. Explain the situation to me again." Following Dear's explanation, a clear picture surfaced in Shui Qian'er's mind. Shui Qianhuan, Shui 7, Shui Qianzhang, Shui Qianhai, Ling Kai and Deer's position of broken bar, including the position of the window. Shui Qian'er thought through everything in detail and was finally at ease. Ling Kai's position was blocked by Deer's body and he wouldn't have been able to see what had happened. At the same time, Deer was the one who walked to the position on her own, and after she walked there, Ling Kai did not move from his spot. The truth was that this incident was just far too sudden and unexpected. This accident, which wasn't supposed to happen, had actually happened. Could it be that the heavens wanted the death of her brother? It seems like this incident wasn't intentionally planned by Ling Kai. If that's the case, broken bar, Shui Qian'er's body could finally relax, and for some reason, she felt relief in her heart. If this incident was engineered by the Ling family, she really wouldn't know what to do. Broken bar. At the very least, her only alliance mate was still trustworthy and could be relied upon. At the same time, it was also because of her own maiden's heart. A broken bar. Little princess, Miss Ling Tian is here. Following a report, Ling Tian entered the room with a wave of fragrant wind. Elder sister is here. Shui Qian'er hurriedly stood up. Since she was sure that it was impossible for Ling Kai to engineer the matter, Shui Qian'er's expression was much better than before. Ling Chen nodded her head and walked forward to Shui Qianhuan. She then investigated his injuries carefully before letting out a dull sigh. Raising her head up, she said with hesitation, "Younger sister, please forgive me for being direct. A broken bar, your brother's injury. Yes, a broken bar. Haze, I'm afraid a broken bar. There isn't any hope. He a broken bar." While Shui Qian'er was already mentally prepared, she still held on to a trace of hope in her heart. She was hoping for some otherworldly medical herb or physician to appear and save her brother's life. Hearing Ling Chen telling her so truthfully, her body trembled and she leaned on the table weeping. Ling Chen sighed and said with a trace of pity, "Younger sister, with your brother's injuries, if we broken bar, it would only be unnecessarily adding on to his pain. Why don't we broken bar?" "No," Shui Qian'er roared in agitation. "No matter what, my elder brother cannot die. He cannot die." Ling Chen sighed and looked at Shui Qian'er gently but did not say a thing. "Elder brother cannot die? He cannot be a broken bar, Shui Qianru muttered under her breath with a pair of hopeless eyes and suddenly burst out crying. As a martial arts practitioner who was extremely familiar with the construct of a human body, she naturally knew that even a celestial might not be able to save Shui Qianruan. However, if she were to drag the matter on further, Shui Qianruan would only grow more and more miserable by the day. In her heart, this was something that she would never be able to accept. Seeing her brother breathing weakly but being able to do nothing at all or even to lessen his pain by a little bit, Shui Qianru felt as though there were 1,000 knives slicing through her body. I heard that Shui Qianruan has a final unfulfilled wish, Ling Tian muttered. I have a method to protect his life for 7 days. In fact, I can ensure that he will not feel any pain in these 7 days, but I will need your approval for this matter. What method? Shui Qianru was elated and seemed to have grabbed onto a life-saving herb. She grabbed onto Ling Tian's hand and shook it. My good sister, as long as you can save my elder brother, I can do anything. My whole family would also be grateful to elder sister's kindness. Ling Tian shook her head and said with a helpless expression, it is impossible to protect his life with such injuries. However, I can imbue my special divine ice energy into his chest and freeze up the fractures of his ribs with my extreme cold chi. The benefit of this would be that he wouldn't feel any pain in his wounds, but he will only be able to stay alive for 7 days. After 7 days, the frozen up injury would have become rotten and all of his organs would be destroyed. At that time, your brother would be dead for sure. A broken bar doing this would only be enough to reduce his pain by 7 days, and it is akin to drinking poison to quench his thirst. Beheading him to treat the poison. Drinking poison to quench thirst. Beheading him to treat the poison. Shui Qianru exclaimed and released Ling Tian's hands before stumbling back by 2 steps. Ling Tian's meaning was clear. She would be able to stop Shui Qianruan from feeling any pain, but at the end of the 7 days, the divine ice energy would lose its effect and Shui Qianruan would die on the spot. There wouldn't be any turning back. Ling Tian took a step forward and a tinge of anxiousness could be heard in her voice. Younger sister, you cannot hesitate at this moment. Your brother's injuries cannot be delayed any further and his life would be lost at any moment. Can you bear to look at your brother die a painful death in front of you? The situation is extremely dire at the moment and your brother is only able to remain alive because of Ling Kai's energy. If you were to hesitate any longer, even 7 days may be broken bar. If we don't do as you said, he may not even survive for 7 days. Shui Qianru lifted up her head and looked at Ling Tian with tears in her eyes. Ling Tian sighed before nodding silently. It isn't just these 7 days. He may not even be able to go past tonight a broken bar. Shui Qianru stood in a daze for a long while before being able to regain her senses. Shui Qianruan's aura was truly becoming weaker and weaker by the minute. Shui Qianru then looked at Ling Tian and took a deep breath. Then I will trouble elder sister Chen. After finishing those words, all of her energy seemed to have been sapped dry and she felt everything in front of her turn blurry. 7 days. Her biological brother who had grown up together with her only had 7 days left. It was a mere 168 hours left. How was this enough? How was this enough? When Shui Qianru finally came to her senses, Shui Qianruan's breathing finally stabilized and the look of pain could no longer be seen on his face. In fact, he even looked to be at ease as he fell into a deep sleep. However, when one approached him, a dense bone-chilling cold could be felt. Especially at the chest position, a thick layer of ice that didn't melt could be seen. However, Shui Qianruan's breathing became smooth and his heartbeat consistent. Ling Tian's control of the divine ice chi was already at an unfathomable level. Shui Qianru then looked at Ling Tian with a questioning gaze. Ling Tian's face was full of fatigue. After unleashing almost all of her energy, she was completely exhausted. Replying Shui Qianru with a silent nod, she quickly closed her eyes to adjust her condition. A figure appeared and Ling Kai walked into the room. Ling Tian opened her eyes and asked calmly, "Have you found them?" Ling Kai shook his head and a trace of fatigue could be seen on his face. The 3 of them should have been hidden by the 6 Shui elders. Although I haven't found them yet, I am sure that they can't be outside of this manor. Skybearing isn't their territory after all, and apart from here, there wouldn't be anywhere capable of hiding them. At the same time, this is also where the Shui family members are concentrated and also where they are strongest. Ling Tian smiled, Apart from this place that we have loaned them temporarily, I doubt they would have the guts to go anywhere else." "That's right, the brothers outside have not found the three of them either." Ling Kai smiled. Shui Qian'er, who was hearing the conversation by the side, turned completely pale. She never imagined that the elders' plan of discussing the matter further was actually to hide the three of them. Although she knew that these elders were already in cahoots with the three brothers, she was still angered to the point she almost could not breathe upon hearing those words. What should she do now? If she were to force her way in to find the three brothers, she would be completely outnumbered and outclassed by the elders' martial arts. She would not be a match for them alone. Besides that, could it be that she had to fight her Shui family members today? Seeing Shui Qian'er's pale expression, Ling Tian sighed in her heart. Even if Shui Qian'er was thoroughly disappointed with her family, it was impossible for her to go against her upbringing of the past 10-odd years. Ling Chen was certain that if the one being injured was Ling Jian or the other 5 Ling brothers, she would definitely seek revenge immediately without any hesitation. If their enemy didn't die, how would this vengeance be resolved? At this moment, even though Shui Qian'er was already angered to the extreme, when she heard about the interference of her family in this matter, she was still accustomed to thinking about the benefits of her family first. Although Shui Qian'er had already decided to kill the 3 Shui brothers, if she were to continue acting in such an apprehensive manner, not to mention taking revenge for Shui Qian'er, she herself might also perish. "What is a family?" Ling Chen said softly as though she was talking to herself. But in this silent room, everyone could hear what Ling Chen was saying. "I remember young noble saying this before." Just what is a family? Young noble had once said that a family is a bunch of people with similar bloodline gathering together for the same goal and fighting together for their future. This was what a family is. Young noble had also said that if a family is filled with internal strife and filled with individuals only fighting for their own benefits, a family would not be considered a family at that point but only a pile of loose sand. That is because they no longer have any values and are no different from the organizations in the pugilistic world. At that time, no matter how glorious the past of the family is, the family would already be slowly walking to its demise. The young noble had said before, "In the world today, there are only 3 true families in the world, the Yu family, Ling family, and Ming family." This is because the family heads of these 3 families have absolute authority over their family, as compared to the other families like the Dongfang, Ximen, Zio. Broken bar, every other family is filled with internal problems and is no longer fit to be called a family. This includes your Shui family. The Shui family, which was once so glorious. With things deteriorating to such a state, there are only 2 ways to solve this problem. First, the family will be destroyed and become the sunset of yesterday. Second, a heaven-defying genius will emerge in the family to unite the family with thunderous methods. Bearing with the pain of removing the bone-deep poison, those who should be killed must be killed and those who should be abandoned should be abandoned. After that, they should get an empire or a more powerful organization to protect them. After a long period of rest, they can then rise up from the ashes. Apart from these 2 paths, there isn't a third one. When the situation of the Shui family had spread to sky-bearing, young noble only said a single phrase after seeing it. Ling Chen then looked at Shui Qian'er. The young noble said that the Shui family was finished. Shui Qian'er listened silently with a complicated expression on her face. The situation in the Shui family has deteriorated to the point that a servant would dare to bully his master. Furthermore, the situation is deteriorating further, and despite your father, Yu Mankong, being a wise individual, he is restricted by the number 1 elder, Shui Wubo. Even though Shui Wubo's martial arts is high, he is a foolish man. However, he still thinks that all of his actions are done in the interest of the Shui family and that he is absolutely loyal to the Shui family. Even if such a person is an absolute expert, he is being made use of by your father's opponent. As long as Shui Wubo died, all the problems of your Shui family would be resolved, but your father doesn't have the heart to do so. He also knows that Shui Wubo is absolutely loyal to the family and does not have any evil intentions. After such a long time, the Shui family is already on the verge of destruction. Even if your father can bear to sacrifice Shui Wubo right now, the outcome wouldn't change. The poison has already seeped too deeply into your Shui family and is already incurable. Even if they are able to quell the internal strife within the family, The impact of this matter would mean that they would be reduced to a second-rate family or even worse. Ling Tian sighed. The rise of a family would be reliant on the unity of the family after all. Even though a martial arts genius and unparalleled expert is important, there would only be harm if one were to place too much of an importance on such matters. There would only be harm and not a single benefit. Sacrifice when necessary, killing when necessary, and breaking off when necessary. Despite the dire situation, your father is still acting in such a hesitant manner. However, he doesn't know that the chance to salvage the situation is already gone and there is no longer any hope. The Shui family is destined to become a part of history. So what if they have 1,000 years of foundation? They are still going to become the sunset of yesterday. Ling Tian said coldly and pointed out the crux of the matter accurately. Within Ling Tian's words were multiple hints to resolve the predicament of the Shui family. However, Ling Tian's expression was still calm and how much Shui Qi'an could understand was up to her. Shui Qi'an's expression was dull and her thoughts were unknown. After a long while, the corner of her lips curled up slightly and a sharp glow could be seen in her eyes as though she had made a difficult decision. Chapter 532, Underestimating the Enemy. Ling Tian stood up and let out a sigh. The Yu family members will be returning to Bright Jade City 2 days later. At that time, there will definitely be men from Bright Jade City coming to fetch them. As such, our operation will also be set to 2 days later. You will bring the Shui family experts to attack the Yu family while I make use of that opportunity to search for the 3 Shui brothers. When you return, I will hand them over to you and allow you to determine how to deal with them. You can also fulfill your brother's final wish at that time. Shui Qi'an's fists clenched up tightly and her thin veins could be seen protruding out from her fair skin. At the same time, a dense killing intent shot out from her eyes. Ling Tian heaved a sigh of relief in her heart and smiled sweetly. Younger sister, take good care of brother Qi'an Huan. With regards to ambushing the Yu family 2 days later, your Shui family can come up with a plan yourselves. At that time, I will send someone to give you accurate information. I will be leaving now. She then waved her hands and left without waiting for Shui Qi'an's reply. On the 3rd morning, the first elder, Yu Zan Shui, and 3rd elder, Yu Zan Kong, came to the Ling residence to exchange pleasantries. They first thanked the Ling family for their care in this period and made a sincere apology for the actions of their Yu family during this period. After that, they then tactfully requested approval to bring back all of their earnings and sky-bearing to Bright Jade City. Then, they emphasized how both the Ling and Yu families were in-laws and would always be friendly towards each other for generations to come. Finally, they requested for the Ling family to take good care of the Yu family's little princess and instructed that they must definitely go to Bright Jade City with Ling Tian and Yu Bingyan after the grand wedding at Broken Bar. The 2 Ling family elders were not simple characters either and also said the necessary pleasantries. They first hosted the 2 Yu elders with great hospitality before urging them to continue their stay with great sincerity. After the 2 Yu elders insisted on their departure, the 2 Ling elders then swore that their Ling family would always be on friendly terms with the Yu family for generations to come and that they wouldn't allow the Yu family's little princess to suffer any grievances. After which, they offered to set up a banquet to send the 2 Yu elders off, and after the 2 Yu elders rejected them politely, the 2 parties bade their farewells unwillingly and with great reluctance. The touching scene of the 2 groups parting with reluctance seemed to have come completely from the heart and was an extremely moving sight. Everyone watching from the side could not help but praise the elders for being extremely emotional individuals. The eyes of all the elders had all turned red as though they were truly the best of friends. Old Madam Ling even mentioned the fact that they were all turning old and after the parting this time, they may no longer be able to meet each other again. These words made the few elders extremely sentimental as they almost hugged each other in grief. After finally sending off the Yu family's troops and seeing them disappearing in the distance, old Madam Ling turned around and all signs of grief disappeared completely. She then threw away the ginger slice that she had hid in her sleeves and a malevolent look could be seen in her eyes. After spitting out a ball of spittle, She cursed the old fellows of the Yu family for being shameless beast-RTs. It wouldn't matter if they only came to Skybearing to eat and live for free. But after freeloading off their Ling family, these Yu family beast-RTs had almost shifted the whole Skybearing city away. She then swore with agitation that she must definitely snatch back every last copper coin that the Yu family stole. If there was even a copper coin short, she would definitely fight her way to Bright Jade City and seek an explanation from Yu Manlu. Chu Tinger, who had watched the whole process, could not help but break out in cold sweat and was filled with admiration towards her mother-in-law's valor. No wonder her father-in-law didn't dare to have a single concubine. Her mother-in-law was truly the role model for all ladies. Of course, with regards to how Grand Marshal Ling didn't have a single concubine, Chu Tinger would not attribute it to her fierceness. She attributed it to the fact that Ling Zhao had an extremely high level of self-awareness, and even if he was surrounded by 3,000 beauties, he would only remain loyal to her. As compared to her frivolous son, her husband was far better. When that brat eats what is in the bowl, he would think about what is in the pot. When he is looking at what is in the pot, he would think about what is by the side of the pot. When looking at what is by the side of the pot, he would be thinking of what is far off. In comparison, her own Ling Zhao was the role model for all guys in this aspect. Of course, after Yusan Shui and Yusan Kong stepped out of Skybearing City, their fictitious expression could finally be relaxed as they began cursing the two Ling elders for being extremely difficult to deal with. The hypocritical smile that was plastered all over the Ling elders' face made all of their hair stand up in disgust. Even if you want to feign sadness and grief, why did you have to use a slice of ginger? Even if you had to use it, why did you have to drag the conversation on for such a long time, causing the smell of the ginger to spread all around and causing our eyes to suffer as well? How irritating, despicable and shameless. At the same time, the two Yu elders were also extremely delighted. After all, they had swept away a large fortune from Skybearing in their present trip. The treasures that they had raked in through every possible means was almost comparable to half a year of revenue for the Yu family. With this fortune by their side, their Yu family would definitely have a larger chance at ruling over the world. Their merit this time definitely couldn't be overlooked. As such, amid the delighted cheering, the more than 1,000 Yu family experts chattered happily along their journey back home with immense satisfaction. Their return journey to Bright Jade City was only 1,200 miles, and their family would send someone to fetch them back halfway. There was no risk or danger involved, and they would definitely have a smooth journey home. The Yu family's experts were already planning their future marriages and fantasies that they had never able to fulfill a broken bar. As such, every now and then, lecherous laughter could be heard among the Yu family's troops. None of them could be bothered about the fact that their horses were already exhausted from the heavy load of their riches. From time to time, there would be a few brothers incapable of controlling their excitement and would let out a loud wolf-like howl to the heavens. The rest of the Yu family members would then laughingly scold those crazy fellows. There were even a few fellows who would hop onto the back of their horses, take off their pants and whip out their tool. While shaking their ass and making a funny face, they would then shoot a water arrow at the Skybearing City afar. After a wave of laughter, there would be some others who would even mimic such an action. A broken bar. There was someone who had even claimed that even if there was a piece of leather in front of him, he wouldn't need any hands or feet to puncture a hole within it. All he had to do was to raise his waist to broken bar. The wheels of the carriages go round and round, with the horses all in misery and gold hanging down from all the passengers. After returning from Skybearing, they would all be able to choose their wife from 100 ladies or broken bar. In front of them was a relatively long and narrow mountain pass. After passing through it and making another turn, they would be at the Black Pine Forest. The Black Pine Forest wouldn't be too far from the Nine Swallow City, and after the Nine Swallow City, they would be in the Northern Wei territory. The sky was gloomy and it looked as though it was about to rain at any time. But in the hearts of the Yu family members, they only felt the cool winds and thought that it was the best possible weather. Thus, the gloomy skies did not dampen any of their high spirits as they excitedly continued on their journey. At the peak of a tall pine tree that could reach the clouds, a black figure silently concealed herself. This position was the highest point in the surrounding few miles and was a full 300 feet above the ground. If one were to look down from this high vantage point, one would truly be able to see everything in the surrounding miles without anything escaping one's sight. The black-robed figure was extremely skinny and was flexible as though she did not have bones. In her bright eyes, it was as though the starry night could be seen, and she was Li Zu. Originally, Li Zu didn't intend to take action this time, but she just could not be at ease to leave Shui Qian'er, who was overall in charge of the mission, alone. Thus, she stealthily followed the troops after they left in order to prepare for the worst. No matter what, nothing must happen to Shui Qian'er. The most amusing thing was that a dozen feet away from Li Zu, there were 3 first-rate experts of the Shui family lying in ambush. They each had a bow in their hands as they observed the road nervously. They had arrived at their spot before Li Zu, and Li Zu had even passed by over the top of their heads, but the 3 of them did not notice the slightest bit of oddity. The way Li Zu saw it, they were like the hero Kaiyu Xiaoyun, who would not move even if they were being burned by fire. The sound of the Yu family troops laughing heartily and teasing each other could be heard from afar. The Yu family's experts were slowly approaching the black pine forest and facing the dense and thick forest. The troops entered without the slightest bit of hesitation. It was as though they never imagined there to be a life-threatening ambush hiding within at all. Shui Qian'er was clad in black robes and hiding at the top of another pine tree. She gripped her sword tightly and her palm was already covered in a layer of sweat. Just a few months ago, she was chased by justice in this very forest because of a treasure before being ambushed by 2 Yu elders. All of her capable subordinates had perished in this very forest, and Ling Tian then appeared to kill the 2 Yu elders before making her and Deer his captives. It seems like her interaction with Ling Tian had also truly begun here. After a few months, the situation was completely different. The one lying in ambush now was Shui Qian'er, and the victims were the Yu family's experts. However, the location had not changed and the time also seemed to be the same. The miraculous happenings of the world truly cannot be predicted. Would Ling Tian, who had made a sudden appearance the last time, appear again today? If he appears today, would he help her? Thinking about Ling Tian, Shui Qian'er's originally hopeless heart suddenly softened before she felt a tinge of pain. Just where are you? If you appear in front of me right now, I would definitely admit my mistakes and stubbornness before asking you for some advice about what I should do right now. What can my Shui family do to prevent destruction? I am really extremely fatigued and can no longer see hope before my eyes. A broken bar. The leading troops of the Yu family had entered the dense forest, and the back of the Yu family troops also slowly entered the forest. However, the 1,000+ troops still acted as in an extremely carefree manner, as though they were here on vacation. On top of the tree, Li Zu could not help but be amazed at just how brainless these more than 1,000 Yu family's troops were. She had seen brainless people before, but had never seen 1,000 of them gathering together at the same spot. What a magnificent scene! A broken bar in such a dangerous place. They were actually bold to the point that they did not send any scouts to sweep the area once. It was about as smart as kicking their own heads around like a football. Miss Li Zu's horizons were truly broadened this time. Chapter 533, Ambush in the Forest. An abrupt change. A sharp whistle sounded, followed by a wave of swooshing sounds breaking through the sky. A dense wave of arrows then shot towards the Yu family's troops from all directions like the rain. Most of the arrows were shot down from a high point and were extremely accurate. The Yu family's experts, who were still in their fairyland dreams, were like the patrons of a brothel receiving a stick to their face just when they were at the peak of the moment. Countless groans and miserable moans of disbelief sounded, and there were even a few high-pitched shrieks which almost made everyone go deaf. A few hundred burly figures collapsed from horseback and rolled on the ground groaning. Their blood painted the forest floor red, and all of their riches added a shimmering gold and silver to the red painting. Those who were luckier actually had dozens of arrows sticking out of their body and looked like a life-sized porcupine. There were even some who had so much jewelry and gold on them that the arrows were unable to strike their flesh but were deflected by those treasures instead. The greedy were truly more blessed. There were even some who were completely unscathed. Countless Shui family experts then charged out from the dense forest, and their sword lights shot towards the sky. They immediately tangled together with the white and purple jade experts of the Yu family in a large chaotic battle. Stay calm, everyone. Form a circular formation and do not break formation. Protect the injured within the circle and face the outside together. Yu Zongkang recovered from the initial shock and roared out commands. At the same time, He felt like puking blood from regret. I have underestimated the enemy. I knew that the Shui family members must have had ulterior motives for coming to Heavenly Star. The family head had hinted me to be wary of them, but I underestimated them because their forces in Northern Wei were wiped out. It is all because of the two old Ling fools. If not for those two old B-street-RDS misleading us, how would we be trapped in such a miserable plight? At this moment, Yu Zonkong, who had no avenue to vent his frustrations, made the two Ling elders his target. He hated the fact that he could not swallow the two of them whole. There were plenty of troops from the Shui family who entered Skybearing this time. As half the local snake in Skybearing, the Yu family naturally noticed the arrival of the Shui family. During a banquet with Duke Ling had mentioned to Yu Zonkong and Yu Shui that Water of Heavenly Wind wanted to spend a large fortune to construct a manor in Skybearing. At the same time, they wanted to form an alliance with the Ling family, and they were currently in discussion with the Ling family to buy a plot of land. After that, Duke Ling then changed the topic and did not elaborate on the matter further. While Duke Ling did not elaborate on the topic, Yu Shui himself would naturally not let the matter go so easily. If their old rival wanted to purchase a plot of land in their own territory, he naturally had to send men to investigate the matter. After a series of investigation, everything was indeed just as what Duke Ling had said. The Shui family had already chosen a place and date to start the construction. At the same time, they were hiring workers for the job. On top of that, many of the members of the Shui family who came to Skybearing were talented architects. After hearing the same piece of news from a few different sources, Yu Zonkong and Yu Shui were at ease. At the same time, they also made plans to burn down the new Shui manor after the construction was almost done to let the Shui family suffer huge losses. You actually want to construct a manor in the second camp of our Yu family, Skybearing City? You are really seeking death. The two of them naturally did not know that all the sources of information in Skybearing were in the hands of the Violent Wind Gang. This so-called construction project of the Shui family was intentionally spread to confuse and numb the Yu family. As for ensuring that all sources of information would spread the same news, that was the specialty of the Violent Wind Gang. Together with the fact that everything went their way after the Yu family arrived in Skybearing, the guard of the Yu family was lowered, and they were no different from spoiled children. They were no longer as alert as the time they first came, and never imagined that someone would make a fool out of them in their second camp. The ambush was just too sudden, and despite Yu Shui and Yu Zonkong trying their best to buy time for their subordinates, they were already trapped in the dense forest and their enemies' encirclement. They were being attacked from all directions, and it was impossible for them to form up into an effective formation in a short period of time. Hearing Yu Zonkong's orders, apart from half of the White Jade experts who were able to form a formation with their superior cultivation, the others were trapped in a bitter battle with the Shui family experts. Miserable groans sounded all over the place, and the sound of swords puncturing into the human flesh could be heard all around. In just a short few minutes, the Yu family had already suffered severe casualties. Endless Shui family's disciples jumped down from the trees and joined into the battle. At the same time, the earth would suddenly loosen, and a Shui family disciple covered in mud would suddenly spring forward from underground, killing many Yu family experts in a short moment. On top of that, there would be sharp arrows slicing through the air, with the targets being the Yu family members who were like fish on a chopping board. With almost every arrow released, a miserable shriek would accompany it. Yu Zonkong's eyes were bloodshot, and he pounced forward while brandishing his sword. His strength was at a completely different level than an ordinary White Jade disciple, and even with enemies all around him, the Shui family's disciples would fall onto the ground wherever he went. All of a sudden, a bright light flashed, and Shui Qianer shot into the air with her sword pointing forward and clothes fluttering in the wind. She then shot down from the tree like a gust of wind, and in just a blink of an eye, she covered a distance of 70 feet. Together with a brilliant splendor from her sword, she descended from above and charged straight at Yu Zonkong. Yu Zonkong did not bother dodging the blow, and he swung his sword forward with a loud roar. With a loud clang, both the swords met and sparks shot out in all directions. Yu Zonkong was forced back 2 steps before he could withstand the force of Shui Qianer's strike. Shui Qianer then spun around in the air, and kicking the trunk of a large tree, she shot back towards Yu Zonkong again and engaged in a bitter battle with him. The 6 Shui elders also emerged from their hiding spots in unison and attacked together. They charged into the crowd with their sleeves floating in the wind, with every action of theirs looking extremely carefree and unrestrained. However, not a single shred of mercy could be seen in their blows, and a wave of miserable groans sounded. The situation on the battlefield was extremely intense. Not too far in front of us is the Black Pine Forest. After this place, we would be near home. Ling Tian waved his whip to point the forest out to Yanzu. At the same time, a trace of agitation could also be seen in his eyes. While 4 months wasn't a long period of time, he had been through far too many life or death situations in this short period of time. While Ling Tian was extremely arrogant and always looked so confident, he was still a man. He also knew how to feel fear, especially in the face of someone like Justice, who he was no match for even with all his strength. If he was just the slightest bit careless, he would have died in a foreign land, and every step of his was truly heart-wrenching. After going on such a huge journey, he was finally back at the place where he grew up in, the place where all of his loved ones were. All of a sudden, a strange emotion rose up in his heart and he felt his nose sniffling. We are finally arriving at Sky bearing a broken bar, which Yanzu felt was completely different from Ling Tian. Every time she was a step nearer to Sky bearing, Yanzu would grow even more nervous. There was also a strong sense of embarrassment in her heart, as though she was a newlywed lady meeting her in-laws for the first time. These few days, Miss Zhou had always been extremely silent, or her face would be flushed red. She just did not know what to feel in her heart, and the scene of her meeting the Ling family members played over and over again in her heart for over 100 times. She would imagine what they would say upon seeing her and how she should respond to them. However, she realized that all of her preparations were completely useless. Look at your nervous appearance. Ha ha, you look just like a frightened quail. Ling Tian looked at Yanzu and burst out laughing. Little Xue, what are you afraid of? I am not afraid at all. You are the little quail. Can't anything nice come out from your mouth? Yanzu glared at Ling Tian fiercely before quickly lowering her head silently. She had completely forgotten to scold Ling Tian for calling her little Xue. This name was something that Ling Tian had thought of in a flash of inspiration. Along the way, he loved the name more and more as he used the name. However, Yanzu was extremely dissatisfied with the name and protested a couple of times. She only allowed Ling Tian to call her Yanzu but not Xue. On top of that, why did Ling Tian have to add the word little? However, Ling Tian refused to listen, and the two of them had argued over this matter along the way. Yanzu naturally did not know what the name Xue meant to Ling Tian in his heart. In fact, Ling Tian would never use this name to address Li Zhu despite it belonging to her originally. To a certain extent, the name Xue was a big taboo in Ling Tian's heart. Little Xue, the various powers of the world can no longer sit still, and the Yu family has officially announced war on Western Han. What do you think the world is fighting over? What do you think is the key to victory? Ling Tian said with a mysterious smile. The key to victory? Yanzu blinked her eyes. How can this be answered simply? The circumstances, geography, commander, quality of soldiers or broken bar, all of these are important factors which will affect the final victor. How can there be a single key to victory? What if the troops and general of both parties are similar? Ling Tian asked with a smile. These a broken bar, the battle will definitely last for a long time, Yanzu said with uncertainty. That's right, Ling Tian chuckled. The moment war lasts for a long time, then the key defining factor between both parties would then be broken bar money. Money? Yanzu turned to look at Ling Tian. That's right. Just as the saying goes, money can move the ghosts and buy over the deities. Fighting a war is basically a fight of wealth, a fight of supplies and support. The moment both parties are engaged in a long drawn-out battle and have similar equipment and strength, the only thing that would differentiate them would be how long they can last. The tents of the soldiers, dressing of the soldiers, meals, weapons, and arrows. Even the water and feed for the horses needs money. The expenditure of an army with hundreds of thousands of men would be hundreds of thousands of gold. This expenditure is not when they are fighting but resting. If the war begins, you have to add on the damage of the weapons as well. A broken bar at that time, millions of gold would be required every day to support the war. Ling Tian smiled proudly. Thus, fighting a war is also a battle of wealth. Without wealth, there isn't a need to fight a war. Yanzu gradually understood what Ling Tian was saying. What you mean ice or broken bar? Ling Tian smiled warmly. When war develops to a certain stage, there needs to be a good housekeeper, and that is more important than anything else. When two forces are similar in strength, the final deciding factor would be this: any unnecessary expenditure every day could result in the defeat of an army. Thus, the one in charge of the overall finances is an extremely important figure. As he said that, Ling Tian looked at Yanzu and said firmly, "And you are the most talented figure in this regard. Little Xue, when you are at Sky Bearing, your job would be to be a good housekeeper and ensure the biggest benefit for my Ling family." Chapter 534, Meeting Again. Ling Tian looked at Yanzu and said firmly, "And you are the most talented figure in this regard. Little Xue, when you are at Sky Bearing, your job would be to be a good housekeeper and ensure the biggest benefit for my Ling family." Yanzu trembled. "You a broken bar? You actually trust me that much? Aren't you afraid that I'll..." Ling Tian waved his hand and stopped Yanzu from continuing. He then said resolutely, "In my eyes, there isn't any princess, young miss or wealthy daughter in my family. There are only two kinds of ladies: first, my woman; second, not my woman." Ling Tian said firmly, "And you, Yanzu, are a woman who I have acknowledged. I don't care what your original status was. I don't care if you are the little princess or young miss of the family. I only know that if I cannot completely trust my woman, then how many people would be worthy of my trust in this world? Who is your woman? Who you acknowledge is your own business. You really know how to daydream. You obviously only want to make use of me." Broken bar. Yanzu's face was completely red and she was overjoyed in her heart. However, she still tried to remain calm on the surface. "What I mean ice a broken bar? What I mean ice a broken bar? I am afraid that I will be incompetent." Ling Tian looked at her calmly and replied, "I believe in you. I believe in you." Those four simple words created huge waves in Yanzu's maiden heart. She had been forced by her family to give her all for her family, but this man in front of her dared to give her such a critical role despite her family being one of his enemies. He did it without any hesitation and was resolute in his actions. Yanzu suddenly felt like crying and looked at Ling Tian as though she wanted to firmly inscribe Ling Tian's words into her heart. Yanzu then turned around and lowered her head. However, three resolute words came out from her lips slowly but firmly. "I promise you." Ling Tian smiled warmly and pinched her nose before saying dotingly, "Why do you have to be so serious? It is only natural for a woman to help her man to do something. Look at you, you are acting as though I am forcing you to do something against your wishes." "A little wish of mine," Yanzu whined in response. "You are the baddie who is trying to force me to do this. HMPH." She then rolled her eyes at Ling Tian and turned her head around. Ling Tian burst out laughing for a while before saying with a soft voice, "If things are really related to the Zhao family, I won't make things difficult for you." After thinking for a while, Ling Tian said those words seriously. No matter what, Yanzu was still the young miss of the Zhao family, and this was something that would never change. Since Ling Tian had decided to fight for hegemony in the world, he would have to face the Zhao family eventually. At that time, rather than making things difficult for them, he might as well spell things out clearly today, lest the two of them have to miserably hide things in their hearts. At the very least, they could be open with each other and did not have to hide things behind each other's backs. After all, 100 lies would be required to cover up a single lie. The most important thing was the fact that Ling Tian did not have the habit to lie to his own woman. Yanzu's body trembled and she turned around to look at Ling Tian. The rims of her eyes turned red and she said with a choking voice, "Danj, thank you. With those words of yours, I know that you will not lie to me. Those words of yours can put me at ease." With Ling Tian spelling out those words clearly, Yanzu could feel that Ling Tian truly trusted her and also cared for her. At the very least, he wasn't trying to deceive her just to receive her help. At times, a woman's wish was truly simply broken bar. "Alright, quickly wipe away your tears. Look at how pitiful your current appearance is. We are returning home soon, and if someone else sees you like that, they would think that this infamous profligate young master has snatched another lady off the streets. If there is someone who wants to be the hero to save the damsel in distress, he would definitely beat me up." Ling Tian shook his head and added, There will probably be more than one person. There should be many chivalrous heroes along the way standing up for righteousness and seeking trouble with me. These skinny limbs of mine would definitely not be able to endure it. After perfecting the thing that his Ling family courtyard lacked the most, Ling Tian was in an extremely good mood. He decided to crack a joke with Yansu, although this joke of his wasn't funny at all. After Ling Tian achieved another breakthrough in his strength, there weren't many people in the world who could match up to him. With his current strength, even justice would find it difficult to kill him. Haha, a broken bar. I am truly curious about just how big the family property of a Ling family is. You have probably sneakily made plenty of profits, right? I am truly curious. Yanzu indeed laughed from Ling Tian's teasing. Family property, it is only a small sum capable of supporting a few wives. It would definitely not enter the sight of the southern fortune deity, Ling Tian said gloomily. Sigh, I am truly a poor young man. Miss, you have to follow a chicken if you marry a chicken and follow a dog if you marry a dog. You have to carry the burdens of the family together with me and prepare yourself to starve on the streets. Yanzu stretched out her hand in an attempt to pinch Ling Tian, but the distance between the both of their horses could not be covered with her arm. Her pinch missed completely and she began waving her fists around instead like a ferocious lioness. Ling Tian burst out laughing and stretched out his arm to bring her over. I have snatched a tribal wife via broken bar. No, I have snatched a fortune deity back home via broken bar. Amid their laughter, both the horses sped up and after making a turn, the dense black pine forest appeared in front of them. At the same time, the miserable groans in the forest landed in Ling Tian's ears. Ling Tian could not help but be stunned. He never imagined that despite returning at the pace of a tortoise, he still didn't miss this exciting show before him. Seeing Ling Tian's frown, Yanzu, who was curled up in his embrace, asked with concern, "What's wrong?" Yanzu's inner chi was limited and thus did not hear anything. Nothing much. There are some fighting sounds ahead. It is probably two dogs trying to bite each other. Ling Tian chuckled. It should be the Shui and Yu families. Ling Tian looked to the horizon and saw the tallest pine tree in the vicinity. He then thought to himself that he should be able to see the battle if he was up on that pine tree. HMPH. Yanzu rolled her eyes and said with a tinge of jealousy, "The little princess of the Yu family is your fiancé. The little princess of the Shui family is also in love with you. You actually dare to say that they are two dogs biting each other?" Ling Tian smiled awkwardly. "In my eyes, little Xor is also a cute puppy. You are all equally cute. You are the puppy." B Street Road. Yanzu pummeled Ling Tian in anger before turning her head around. Ling Tian chuckled and urged his horse towards the forest. After entering the forest, Ling Tian suddenly grabbed Yanzu and flew up into the sky, speedily traversing through the dense forest. He was truly like a gust of wind, weaving around the dense trees as he moved toward his target. Li Zu's body tensed up in nervousness as she felt a sense of danger approach her. It was as though a top-notch expert was coming towards her. The pressure she felt from this expert was something extremely rare in this life of hers. Even if the pressure was slightly less than justice, the difference wasn't huge. It was a pressure that could threaten her life. In this world, could there be such an expert apart from justice? Li Zu finally felt a trace of fear. Even though she had been through 2 lives, she was still afraid of the death god. She could clearly feel that the speed of the person approaching her was something which she had never witnessed before in her life. She was probably not a match for this expert before her. Even Ling Tian, who was at the 10th stage of the divine shocking dragon formula, could not match this person in speed. Just who was he? Li Zu finally recovered from her shock as she turned behind to take a look. With a loud swoosh, the incoming expert had already landed in front of her, and the powerful gust of wind stopped abruptly. From his extreme speed to sudden stop, it was as though all of his actions had melded into the heavens and earth. His toes were lightly placed on top of a finger-thick branch, and the branch had only trembled slightly, as though the one standing on top wasn't a living person but a small dragonfly. The figure of the expert was extremely stable, and despite the winds and the surroundings, he was still as stable as a mountain. Furthermore, there was a young lady in the arms of this expert. Li.Tang Seeing the appearance of the incoming expert, Li Zu let out a cry of shock. She never imagined that this mysterious expert would be Ling Tian. She then quickly covered her lips, afraid that she would let out a loud shriek in shock. It was just too unexpected. After parting for a short month, Ling Tian's martial arts had actually improved so quickly like a rocket. His speed alone was definitely the number one in the world. Even the number one expert justice would probably be incomparable to Ling Tian in terms of speed. Li Zu dared to say that there wouldn't be anyone else in the world capable of reaching such a speed. Furthermore, there was still someone in Ling Tian's embrace. "We can truly meet anywhere in life, pretty lady. We meet again," Ling Tian chuckled. He then looked at the gloomy sky and lowered his head to witness the bloody battle below him. After that, Ling Tian shook his head and pretended to sigh with grief. "The gloomy heavens loom above you and the blood-red ground is painted before you." Miss Li Zu sits on the pine tree firmly with a natural and carefree expression. "If there was a glass of red wine in your hand, it would truly be the perfection of life. Leading such a leisurely and elegant life truly leaves me in admiration." Glib-tongue B Street Road. Li Zu cursed, "No matter how leisurely my life is, how can I be compared to young noble Ling Tian who is hugging a beauty at a high point while expressionlessly observing the mountain of corpses and sea of blood below him. This little lady here is the one who is in complete admiration." HMPH. The joy and excitement from seeing Ling Tian had been completely transformed into a belly full of anger. She hated the fact that she could not give him a bite as she cursed Ling Tian in her heart for being as annoying as he was in their previous life. Especially the fact that he could actually bring a beauty back in his arms despite going out to escape for his life. All of a sudden, Miss Li Zu's jealousy exploded forth from her heart. Thank you for your continued following. Please support us by subscribe to encourage our continued creation. And press the bell to notify new chapter from us. Thank you.